Hello and welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm your host, Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold, and the unofficial first half of the Major League Baseball season is officially in the books. The Tigers entered the All-Star break with a 59-38 record through 97 games in the 162-game regular season. The season is already 60% complete. We've only got 65 games remaining before it's time for the postseason. The Tigers, they still have the best record in baseball, but they rode a season-worst 4-game losing streak into the All-Star break. This week, the Tigers had a 2-4 record. They went 2-1 versus the Tampa Bay Rays at Comerica Park and 0-3 versus the Seattle Mariners at Comerica Park. Now, the Mariners swept the Tigers in 3 games. It was a 12-3 loss on Friday, a 15-7 loss on Saturday, and an 8-4 loss on Sunday. It was the first time the Tigers were swept in 2025 since March 27th to 29th. That was the season opening series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Tigers have a 13-13 record in their past 26 games, which is tied with 3 teams for 15th in winning percentage since June 14th, trailing the Milwaukee Brewers, Boston Red Sox, Miami Marlins, Los Angeles Dodgers, Houston Astros, Toronto Blue Jays, Seattle Mariners, Chicago Cubs, Cincinnati Reds, Baltimore Orioles, Athletics, Texas Rangers. Like all 14 of those teams have been better than the Tigers since June 14th. Again, this is still the best team in baseball, so we're not going to push the panic button, but the Tigers are 13-13 in their past 26 games dating back to June 14th. The All-Star Game is Tuesday, July 15th, with 6 players representing the Tigers, including starters Tarek Skubal, Riley Greene, Gleyber Torres, and Javier Baez. And then the first game coming out of the All-Star break is Friday, July 18th against the Texas Rangers. We don't need to rehash everything about what happened over the weekend against the Mariners, but we do need to talk about the bullpen. I've been talking about this since the offseason, even dating back to last season. Like I talked about this in spring training. I talked about this early in the season this year. And even when the Tigers ran their magical run last year, like that was one of the reasons why I was a little bit concerned about how they would fare in the postseason. It was because the Tigers have a bullpen problem. Their relievers rank 30th in MLB with a 22% whiff rate. The best swing and miss bullpen in baseball is the Houston Astros with a 32% whiff rate. The Tigers, a 22% whiff rate. The Houston Astros, a 32% whiff rate. You also have the Toronto Blue Jays, Atlanta Braves, New York Yankees, Tampa Bay Rays, San Diego Padres, the Athletics, Cleveland Guardians, Baltimore Orioles, Colorado Rockies. All of those teams have at least a 27% whiff rate from their bullpen. The Tigers are all the way down at 22%, and that ranks dead last among the 30 MLB teams. And here's what I've been talking about. The Tigers need a high leverage reliever. Actually, they probably need multiple high leverage relievers with at least a 30% swing and miss rate. Right now, your primary high leverage relievers are Will Vest with a 28% whiff rate and Tommy Kahnle with just a 23% whiff rate. Like Carlos Hernandez, whom the Tigers picked up off waivers from the Philadelphia Phillies, is the best swing and miss reliever, but it's a train wreck every time he takes the ball because he doesn't know where it's going. So the Tigers bullpen, for the most part, is composed of an array of pitch to contact relievers, which means there's going to be a ton of balls in play, and balls in play that leads to hits. You know what doesn't lead to hits? Swing and miss. But the Tigers don't miss enough bats, especially out of their bullpen. And these days, everyone in that bullpen seems to be really tired. And when you're gassed, you're not going to command your pitches. And if you're not commanding your pitches and your pitch to contacts, those pitches that would typically be painted on the corners and result in groundouts, now those are going for singles, doubles, home runs, or you're just walking guys. Like we've seen a lot of that recently. So the Tigers would greatly benefit from swing and miss relievers at the July 31st trade deadline. I mean, even Jason Benetti, the TV voice of the Tigers, who is employed by the Tigers, is calling out the bullpen problem. On Sunday's broadcast, here's what Benetti said, quote, "How far can you go with the 30th bullpen whiff rate in Major League Baseball? A lot of contact in the bullpen leads to that question of, can you get through high leverage innings, long range in the playoffs if you're not getting as much swing and miss as other teams?" end quote. That's Jason Benetti. It's good to hear a Tigers employee admit there's a bullpen problem because nobody else seems to want to talk about it. The swing and miss problem in the bullpen, it's coming back to bite the Tigers. Like, you remember how the Tigers had one of the best bullpens in baseball at the end of 2024 and at the beginning of 2025. Well, now, again, this is mid-July. You look at for the entire 2025 season, Tigers bullpen, it's all the way down at 21st in MLB with a 4.13 ERA. And the pitching staff as a whole, that's starters and relievers, ranks 27th in MLB with a 5.47 ERA for the month of July. A lot of that is a result of so many hits being allowed by these relievers, which is turning into runs. Now, the Tigers are going to make the postseason, so there's no pressure on President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris to make a trade right now. You still have another couple of weeks until the July 31st trade deadline to assess the situation, check out what you have internally, and then make trades. Like, if the Tigers were in a division race, maybe we'd be talking about how they need to make a trade right now. But they're going to win the AL Central. But when the July 31st trade deadline rolls around, I think Tigers fans should expect an all-star caliber reliever. I'm talking Emmanuel Clase of the Cleveland Guardians, Johan Duran of the Minnesota Twins, Mason Miller of the Athletics, David Bednar of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Felix Bautista of the Baltimore Orioles, Ryan Helsley of the St. Louis Cardinals, Aroldis Chapman of the Boston Red Sox. Like, you can't expect to win the World Series without one of those guys. So if the expectation is to win the World Series, then it's fair to expect the Tigers to trade for one of those names I just mentioned. And it might take a top 7 prospect in the farm system, but you got to do what you got to do to get the championship ring. And the Tigers desperately need an elite swing and miss reliever in the bullpen. They probably need 2 of those guys, but let's start with one. If the Tigers don't add a reliever like Johan Duran or Mason Miller or David Bednar, then they're not serious about winning the World Series. I think that's a fair way to describe it. All right, it's time for the Big Two. And for the Big Two, we're joined once again by Scott Bentley, host of the Locked On Tigers podcast. But before we get into the Big Two, Scott, how are you reacting to the Mariners sweeping the Tigers? And can we please get an elite swing and miss reliever for this bullpen at the July 31st trade deadline?
Yeah, I think that last point is honestly the biggest thing to focus on. Like, I don't know. I understand that we are, you get swept, everybody freaks out. That's kind of like how it goes, I guess, a little bit. None of those games ended up being like relatively close either, which I think probably bothers some people. You're going to get swept, man. It's 162 games. The Dodgers just lost 6, 7 in a row. I know people have been throwing that around too. Like, it's a fair and valid point. Like, we'll see. I need a lot more until I'm like thinking the sky is falling. That being said, I think that it is a great opportunity to highlight the team needs. And I really do think that swing and miss reliever is obviously very important. And honestly, like, starting pitching depth is probably in there as well. But if you were to like rank, biggest team needs, is there anything above swing and miss reliever? Like, is there anything above like a high leverage, guy that can get strikeouts in the back end of the bullpen? We kind of talked about it last week, I guess, but like the offense, it'd be nice to add a bat. For sure. Starting pitching depth, you need to add that. I'm not sure there's anything bigger than that high leverage reliever. The problem is every single fan base of a playoff team and the media of every single playoff team in baseball is saying the same thing. So that's not like unique. Well, you're not special because you need a big like reliever, like everybody needs a reliever.
But the hard part for the Tigers is if you were to mention, right, like what is above a swing and miss high leverage reliever, the only thing above that is 2 of them, right? I mean, if you look at needs, right, like the Tigers really could benefit from 2 of them. And one of them has to be somebody who is among the elite of the elite in baseball. Like an Emmanuel Clase or Johan Duran or a Mason Miller or David Bednar or Felix Bautista or Ryan Helsley or Aroldis Chapman. Like, you can't expect to get to the World Series without somebody like that locking things down. You can't just rely on Will Vest and Tommy Kahnle the rest of the way. So you got to go out and get an elite high leverage reliever and then maybe also like an above average high leverage reliever as well to add 2 of those kind of guys to the back end of your bullpen. Otherwise, you're going to be toast in October.
Yeah. I completely agree. And then Nightingale put out, the Tigers are like interested in Dern and Jax, which is like great, but so are 15 other teams, brother. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's again, like, that's not like unique to the Tigers. Like it's great to talk about. It's great to hear that, they're trying to pursue someone that, fits the mold of this conversation we're having. But every single playoff team is going to want to add a guy that throws an 100-mile-an-hour splitter, dude. Yeah, like that sounds pretty awesome to anybody who needs it. And Jax is obviously incredible too. So yeah.
Yeah, Bob Nightingale of USA Today reporting that, of course, everybody would want somebody like that. The question is, what would you be willing to give up? And in that case, if you're looking at a Johan Duran or a Griffin Jax, right? I mean, you're looking at a top 7 prospect in your system, maybe even a top 5 prospect that you'd have to part ways with. So would the Tigers be willing to do that? I'm not so certain, but would that help them become a World Series championship caliber team? Yes, 100% it would. And if that's the goal, might as well go do it. So, all right, question one of the big two. Who did the Tigers select on day 1 of the 2025 MLB Draft? The Tigers made 4 selections on Sunday in day 1 of the draft. They'll also make 17 selections on Monday in day 2, rounding out their 21 picks. As for day 1, the Tigers selected 2 high school hitters and 2 college pitchers. The Tigers drafted shortstop Jordan Yost at number 24 overall in round 1, catcher Michael Oliveto at number 34 in competitive balance round A, right-hander Malachi Witherspoon at number 62 in round 2, and left-hander Ben Jacobs at number 98 in round 3. The big names there, Jordan Yost, Malachi Oliveto, both 18-year-old left-handed hitters from the prep ranks. Yost is from Sickles High School in Tampa, Florida. Oliveto is from Hopag High School in New York. They're known for making smart swing decisions. Yost is definitely more of a hit-first prospect. Oliveto, more of a power-first prospect, but I do like some of the hit tool there and think it could develop. The evaluators, I mean, they expect Yost to stick at shortstop. Oliveto, he might have to move off catcher at some point, move to a corner outfield position, though the Tigers, they disagree on that. Yost committed to Florida. Oliveto committed to Yale. The Tigers have just under $11 million in bonus pool money to spread among their 21 picks, and nobody's a Tiger until they sign officially. But both these guys, like Yost and Oliveto, they're high risk, high upside draft picks. And to be honest, Scott, like all 4 of the day 1 picks seem like high risk, high upside picks. Even the 2 college pitchers, at least in my opinion. As you look at what the Tigers did on day 1, kind of what are some of your takeaways?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that last part at all. I mean, you look at a guy like Witherspoon, right? Like his brother obviously is like one of the premier pitchers in the draft. And, it's the arsenal's not super different. It's just one of them throws strikes and one doesn't. And we got the one that so far, at the collegiate level doesn't. But, the Tigers' development is so keen on that, dominate the strike zone, et cetera, et cetera. That'll definitely be a focal point. But yeah, no, like Yost is, I guess you can kind of clump both of them at the top, both prep hitters at the top together. Like, some people freak out when like they haven't heard maybe like the name of the guy or like, rankings say he's like not even supposed to go. The MLB draft has so much more nuance than that with, like slot money and all that. Like, it's not just, who's the guy that's ranked, the highest on Pipeline or whatever like that. But on top of that, I think, and I can't even believe I'm saying this given how, the era that you and I grew up in, but like, I feel like this front office has almost maybe earned like the benefit of the doubt in terms of like the draft. Like the last 2, I think are shaping up to be so solid, especially 2 years ago. Obviously looks fantastic, but like they clearly have a profile. Right? They clearly have a profile that they like, and they go, you know what? If they can hit and they can put the bat on the ball and make good swing decisions and draw their walks and whatever, we will teach the power. And these are prep players anyway, right? Like they are not going to go after like these big, thumpers or the like maybe like a huge power, profile out of a prep player. They're going to take their preps because they're super developable and they're very moldable, I guess. Like you can kind of mold preps to be the types of players that you want them to be rather than, them going to an SEC school and pitchers throwing 150 pitches in like 4 starts or whatever. But like they like their lefty prep hitters that are athletic. They play premier positions. They're all almost up the middle. And they maybe have a little bit of speed to them like Yost. But like Yost struck out 10 times his entire high school career. Like he struck out once his senior year. He struck out 10 times total in 4 years of high school ball. Like that is a Tigers profile these days, brother. Like that's just what they are going to go after. And he's a lefty. I know we kind of joke about it, but like both of those prep guys are lefties too. Like they just clearly have a profile they like and that they think they can develop. And both of these guys fall into that. Oliveto, I love, and that's part of that is just like my catcher bias, I feel like. But I really like the bat. Obviously, is like why they got him, but I don't mind the defense. The arm is a question, and like there's a lot of inconsistencies with that. The pop time's not very good right now, but like this is a guy that in terms of just like keeping the ball in front of you and whatnot, and kind of the footwork behind the plate in that sense, I actually really liked what I saw. It's just a matter of, you know, trying to keep runners off the bases and whatnot. And that'll be a long development path, if you will, for both of these guys probably. And then, yeah, the college arms are, you know, a lefty with a lot of spin and a righty with really good stuff. And that is again, people, they think they can mold, like with Witherspoon, like at worst, you're going to get a reliever that throws 98. Like, oh no. You know, like they're their third pick of the draft. Like, I'll take that, brother. So yeah, like I don't know. Like I think it's ridiculous to be like super mad or super happy, really. Like either way, you know, today, you know, we'll see how the development path looks, but they have a profile that has worked the last 2 years. It's gotten them some really good prospects aside from like the McGonigals and Clarks. Like last, you look at Rayner, looks like one of the best prospects in baseball. Like, They clearly have a mold that they're going to continue to follow, and they followed it again. It's not like surprising that they walked away kind of looking with the 4 players they did on night one.
Yeah, to be fair, like we're not going to know on these guys, especially the high school players, for years and years, exactly. Right? We still really don't even know on Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Josue Briseño,
sure.
Bryce Rayner. Like we think we know, but until they really get there to the big league level and produce, like we really don't know.
Right.
But looking at it after doing what was only like, I don't know, 12 to 15 hours of research on my end when you look at these guys, because again, they were just picked. Like I didn't know about these guys, you know, pre-draft, right? Like this is 15 hours of research on these guys. Like I do really like Michael Oliveto. I think I like him more than Jordan Yost. For Yost, you're spot on. Like it's a 412 batting average his senior year. 4 home runs, 20 walks, 1 strikeout in 35 games. Those 4 homers were the only homers that he hit throughout his entire 123-game career in high school. But it is elite contact skills. It is advanced feel for the strike zone. Like he's going to make smart swing decisions. He's going to put the ball in play. That's what the Tigers like. You've got an above average runner, an above average defender at shortstop. Those are all really good things. Those are all things that should be able to play at the big league level. But the one bad thing is the power. Like he needs to develop strength if he wants to be an impact hitter. He already went from 115 pounds as a freshman to 170 pounds as a senior. But at the MLB Draft Combine in June, his max exit velocity didn't even reach 99 miles an hour. So he's got to hit the ball harder if he wants to make an impact with the power. The Tigers think there's a lot of projection to add strength, but who really knows, right? Like there is probably a world in which Jordan Yost ends up being a 250 to 280 hitter at best who struggles to hit 10 home runs. And regardless of how good the defense is, I'm not sure that's what you're looking for offensively from the shortstop position. Like if that's his ceiling, I'm scratching my head. If the ceiling is 250 to 280 with less than 10 home runs and elite defense, like that's a fine player. Like that's maybe a good utility player, but I'm not really sure if that is like an everyday player on a championship caliber team. And we'll see if he develops into the power. If he ends up being a 280 to 300 hitter with 15 plus home runs, like now we're talking. Like now we're talking about something. So we'll see how Jordan Yost ultimately turns out. Michael Oliveto, again, he was a late bloomer. Like he was pretty much completely unranked, and then he jumps inside like the top 10 on a lot of draft boards. That happened last fall at Perfect Games WWBA World Championship in Jupiter, Florida. It's a wood bat tournament. He hit .615 with 2 home runs, and that performance shoots him up the draft boards. And then the Tigers ultimately are convinced to roll the dice on him in the draft. He has to develop the hit tool a little bit, but if that happens, you are looking at a guy with the power that he has. I mean, he could hit 250 to 270 with 25 plus home runs. Like that is the type of hitter that he could become. Again, we're projecting out and we're not going to know for a long, long time. But when you look at the raw tool set and what this guy can be, yeah, 250 to 270, 25 to 30 home runs, like sign me up for that all day long. He hits the ball hard, especially to the pull side. There's a lot of things to like, but we just don't really know how it's all going to translate to pro ball either, because this guy's a high schooler in New York. He did not face top tier prep pitching. There's a reason why he was unranked until he goes down to Florida and he goes down to Jupiter and he's in that Wood Bat tournament and he rakes there and he really impresses some people. Well, why didn't he impress people before that? Well, because he was playing high school baseball in New York. So as a senior, yeah, it was a 435 batting average, 9 home runs, 30 walks, 6 strikeouts. But of those 30 walks, 14 of them were intentional walks. So a lot of free passes. And the next step here for Oliveto is just to prove that he can hit against better pitching in the minor leagues. That starts in the Florida Complex League. If he can do that, if he can prove that he can hit against better pitching in the minor leagues, then he could be a really good piece for the Tigers. But if he can't do that, then we're never going to see him in the big leagues. Like if he can't hit against that better pitching in the minors, well, he's never going to make it to the big league. So I think there's a wide range of outcomes, and the Tigers are obviously rolling the dice on the fact that this guy is going to be a legit hitter, somebody who can hit for not only power, but can also hit for contact as well. And as for defense, the Tigers want to keep him at catcher because of the athleticism, but yeah, not a great pop time, below average receiving skills. So the Tigers are hoping they can teach him some techniques, whether that's going down in a one knee setup or certain things with catching coach Ryan Cienko on how to receive, and maybe that'll help him become a really good catcher. So again, for both these guys, we'll see how all this goes over the next few years, but we're not going to know for a while.
Yeah, no, of course. And I am to a point now where, like, I don't think the Tigers, this is going to sound like crazy, but bear with me. I don't think they care about like the wide range. Like, I think they're all about ceiling. Like, I think that their mindset going in, that's why it's all prep, dude. Like they are, and like arms are a little bit different, right? Like you see a guy that throws 99 with decent stuff there in the second round. Like, you take a swing on him, but now, I think just kind of under the assumption this is every single year they've started the draft off with prep, with 2 prep even. I think last year too, was that either way, they are so prep heavy. You look at the comparison between the Avila era and this era in terms of just the amount of prep players taken. It is mind-boggling, dude. They took like 11 high school players in their first draft, the Harris's first draft year. That was more than like the previous 8 Avila drafts combined or something ridiculous. So like that is the give and take with a prep player. Higher ceiling, lower floor, right? Like you don't know. And there is that wide range of outcomes. And I think that they are the anti-Angels, if you will. Okay. Like the Angels are like, you know what? We're going to take somebody that we want in the majors by like the end of the week. Okay. And that's like kind of like not even really a joke. Like it sounds funny, but like that is kind of what the Angels do. The Tigers are like, you know what? We don't care. Almost like they're not as connected. The like minor league system, major league team are like not as, I don't know, like unified, like in my head. Like they're like, okay, we are going to have this system. We're going to take guys with upside, and hopefully it just becomes kind of like this cycle of like, okay, once the big 3 are in, AAA or on the cusp of the majors, then, like Rayner is in high single A or double A. And then the people we take like this year will be in like, it'll just kind of be, completely flourished. And there's just going to be that young talent kind of at every level. And the risk you run is like you mentioned, the wide range of outcomes. Not every single prospect you take is going to hit. Not every single prep player you take, even at the top of a draft, is going to hit, especially as you move outside of the top half of the first round. That range only gets wider and wider, right? About what they could turn into. So again, the first 2 drafts I think so far have gone pretty well, but like, we don't know what we don't know. And this is clearly their mindset, and they like their profiles that they have, and we'll see if they continue to work. But I think you're right. They're just, you were talking about guys that could not be established Major League Baseball players, or guys that could be really solid, 3 to 4 win players at the Major League level if the things that we're talking about they're struggling in end up developing.
And that's where I go back to the 2022 draft, even when Al Avila was still the Tigers general manager, and the Tigers picked Jace Young with the number 12 overall pick. And there were a lot of people in the Tigers organization, including one big name person who's still here in the organization who, really wanted the Tigers to draft Zach Neto. And now Zach Neto was a college player, but maybe under the, Scott Harris regime, maybe it's Jet Williams who went 14th to the New York Mets. And how would you feel if the Tigers had Jet Williams in their organization right now. And even if it wasn't Jet Williams, let's say that it was Zach Neto, who went 13th to the Los Angeles Angels. I mean, Zach Neto playing for the Detroit Tigers right now, like how incredible would that be, right? But instead, it's Jace Young. And so I think, yeah, if you look at going back to 2022, like I said, could you imagine Jet Williams over Jace Young? That's probably the pick that a Scott Harris draft mold would have selected, right? Jet Williams was a prospect out of high school who had a ton of upside, and you're banking on the upside play. But now in this draft, we're seeing the Tigers even do that with the pitching. When you do talk about like Oklahoma right-hander Malachi Witherspoon, Arizona State left-hander Ben Jacobs, like both of these guys have a lot of upside, but they don't throw strikes. Like they walk a lot of guys, and that does not fit the Scott Harris pillar of dominate the strike zone. So we'll see if the Tigers are able to untap that. But Malachi Witherspoon, you throw 96 miles an hour and your fastball tops out at 100. You got a low 80s curveball, an upper 80s slider. Both those pitches generate whiffs. Like you got a low 3/4 arm slot to get some deception, but you struggle with the walks. And it wasn't just like one bad year. He struggled with the walks throughout his entire college career. Probably needs to fix his delivery or at least find some repeatability of his optimal delivery. The Tigers have done a good job of that with biomechanics, but for him to be effective, that needs to be fixed. And then for Ben Jacobs, it's a 93 mile an hour fastball, maxes out around 95. You got a slider, curveball, changeup, the fastball, slider, and changeup. Those are bat missers. And it's always good to have multiple swing and miss pitches, especially from the left side. But the main problem is like, yes, he struggled with the walks. Like he is a strikeout machine, but his 13.2 strikeouts per 9 innings in college, it's accompanied by a 5.2 walks per 9 innings. That's a lot of walks per 9 innings. So we'll see. I think again, like both Malachi Witherspoon and Ben Jacobs, they have a reliever risk, but the Tigers are going to try to develop these guys as starters. And I think it's going to be a good test for the pitching department because these guys are not dominate the strike zone guys, but they are high upside stuff guys. And so we know the Tigers can develop individual pitches. We know they can add velocity, but can they fix command issues? We'll have to check back in a couple of years on these college arms. And I'm not trying to be negative. Like if none of these guys made it to the big leagues, I would not be shocked. Like if none of these guys got there, I wouldn't sit back and say, man, I never could have seen this coming. Like Jordan Yost might not have any power. Michael Oliveto doesn't have a track record of performance against elite prep pitchers. Malachi Witherspoon can't throw strikes with any of his pitches. Ben Jacobs, he throws strikes with his fastball, but he cannot throw strikes with his secondary pitches. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Oliveto ends up hitting 250 to 270 with 25 to 30 home runs in the big leagues, you know? And maybe Malachi Witherspoon becomes a high leverage reliever in save situations. So again, it's called high risk, high upside for a reason. And the Tigers made 4 risky picks with a lot of upside. All right. Question 2 of the big 2. Zach McKinstry and Casey Mize were added to the 2025 All-Star game as replacements, giving the Tigers a total of 6 All-Star representatives. Scott Bentley, can Zach McKinstry and Casey Mize maintain their first half performances in the second half of the season?
Well, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking it, Ev. You're clearly good at your job. I don't know, man. Like, is it messed up for me to say, like, for McKinstry specifically, like, I don't really care if McKinstry falls off a cliff and goes back to what he was the last 2 years. Obviously that would hurt and the Tigers would have to, mix and match their way through the second half. But I'm not going to be like mad that for half a season he held, like 3 WAR pace. Like, I don't know. I think
that's one of those things. What's the quote? Like, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened.
Right. Right. Realize you're in the good old days while you're in them, like it's McKinstry at least has the floor of like, okay, even if he just wakes up tomorrow and just completely stops hitting, you're still going to get a plus athlete that can play plus defense at a lot of different positions and is a lefty. So like there's an inherent floor that kind of comes with his production that we've seen over the last years. We have seen him not hit at all and still, like how he is utilized and we've still seen him play plenty because of that. So I think that is a good thing. The thing I worry about between the two of them is Mize, and not because I want to be like fear mongering and be like, oh my goodness, we have the best record in baseball, let's find things to freak out about. But like the swing and miss and the strikeout stuff with Casey Mize, I think is a legitimate concern. And like I think that like he had the injury, so the innings he has aren't necessarily as much as like some of the other frontline starters that made the All-Star game and have been completely healthy in the first half. And And I only say that just to say it's a little bit of a smaller sample size, by 20, 30 innings for some of these guys. And he got, smacked around this weekend, but everybody that kind of took the mound did. So I'm not sure that's really unique to him. It's been a point of concern his entire major league career. And it's not different this year. But until this weekend, he had a sub-3. And it was like, okay, well, he's getting soft contact. The splitter has been a ground ball pitch, which is like not what we really wanted. But it was still effective, just not in the way that, maybe we thought it was going to be at one point. So I think that is probably, if we're clumping those two players together, McKinstry hits, he doesn't hit, I'll live either way, man. I'm not going to be like banking on McKinstry to be an 820 OPS hitter the rest of his Tigers tenure. But Mize, I think that one's a little more legitimate. Like I think it's fair to be like, hey, we need more swing and miss. A lot of his projective numbers are way higher because he doesn't get a lot of swing and miss, and the strikeout numbers aren't great. We have seen him take strides. We've seen him improve. That is something that he still needs to improve on, though, because that, I think, if there is any Achilles heel there, that is going to, maybe bite him in the second half. It is probably that he needs to keep the ball out of play a little bit more than he has. But certainly no complaints about their first halves. Just, looking ahead, that if there's anything, why wouldn't they be as good? It's probably that.
I'm right there with you. And for Zach McKinstry, just to kind of take a step back and reflect on what he's done. This guy right now is hitting 285 with 8 home runs and an 836 OPS in 88 games.
I undersold the OPS even. Yeah, golly.
You did. And it's 3.1 F-WAR. That is 8th among American League position players, trailing only Aaron Judge, Cal Raleigh, Bobby Witt Jr., Byron Buxton, Jose Ramirez, and Cedar Rafaela. He is having a career best season on offense and defense. And while he's raking on offense, he's playing third base, right field, left field, shortstop, second base, even first base. Prior to this season, he's pitched. So he's pretty much done everything except for catch. And he's a solid defender at all those positions. You can put him out there and you can trust him to make a play when he needs to make a play. And on top of that, he's an elite runner on the bases. So Zach McKinstry currently on pace to be a 5-WAR player by the end of the 2025 season, which would make him a top 25 player in all of baseball. But there are still 65 games remaining. So it's can he keep this up, or is this more of a one-hit wonder thing? And I think to your point, even if he does fall off a cliff and this all kind of dies out, I think we're going to appreciate everything that Zach McKinstry was, for these 88 games that he's played. Because again, even going back, right? Come on. This guy was a 220 hitter in, I think it was 380, 390 games in his big league career entering 2025. And then in 88 games this year, he's hitting 285 with a near 840 OPS. I'm sorry, I don't really see this continuing. But for Casey Mize, I do think that, everything that you say about the swing and miss is important to talk about, because the swing and miss is the best that it's ever been, and it's still not very good. And I think that's kind of the point to make here too, is this guy, he's got a 3.15 ERA, 22 walks, 77 strikeouts across 88 and 2/3 innings and 16 starts. And hat tip to Casey Mize for what he's done, because it feels like he's been through hell and back. We're talking about the draft, right? Since the Tigers drafted him number 1 overall in 2018, top prospect on your way up the farm system. You make your MLB debut in 2020. You show a lot of promise in 2021. And then you have the elbow and back surgeries, sidelined for most of 2022. And all of 2023. And then it's an ugly 4.49 ERA in 2024. And then Casey Mize changes everything this past offseason. He goes back to the drawing board, crafts a new attack plan. He's going fastballs down in the zone, more velocity on the splitter, new variation of the slider. And those adjustments have helped him get to a 3.15 ERA and solidified himself as number 2 starter in the Tigers rotation, maybe number 3 if you favor Reese Olson, which I think most people do. But he's finally missing more bats and generating more strikeouts, all while limiting walks, but it's still not enough. That's the problem. He's 28 years old, just like Tarek Skubal. And I'm going to be curious to see how does he evolve with his new attack plan in his next, 45 starts with the Tigers, assuming he stays healthy and works as a starter before he enters free agency after the 2026 season. Because that's the question right now. Is Casey Mize going to be this version of himself or worse? Or is he going to continue to get better with the swing and miss? Because if he really wants to evolve into that upper echelon of pitcher, you have to get more swing and miss. You have to get more strikeouts. I do like the developments and the improvements, but that's really going to be the question. Like, is this guy going to revert back to his old ways as teams start to figure out his new attack plan? Or is he going to continue to build off of this and get more swing and miss? I think that's the difference, between Casey Mize being a legit number 2 starter or Casey Mize being a 4 or a 5 starter, where he does a great job with the Bulldog mentality. He grinds his way through outings. Like, there'll be runners on base. He always seems to find a way to get out of it. But the difference between being a legit dude at the top of a rotation as opposed to a number 4, number 5 starter, it is that swing and miss. We've talked about it with the relievers. We talk about it with starters. Casey Mize, if he really wants to be that true number 2 for the long haul, he has to miss more bats.
No, I obviously completely agree. And I think the point you made there was really insightful just about the attack plan and the types of pitches he's throwing. Cause like we saw him in spring and we were like, oh, there's a 91 mile an hour splitter. Surely that's going to improve the swing and miss a lot. Oh, the fastball is now the highest velo we've ever seen. And when he came back from injury, right? Like that should help. And even like the breaking ball, he has like I feel like he has 15 different variations of like his slider. Like there's just like a bunch of different shapes that he's throwing out there and whatever. And that's all great. So I guess my point is, what else is there to do in terms of, arsenal? Like I feel like he kind of is what he is, dude. He's pushing 30 and like these are his pitches. That's probably the arsenal that he's just going to go forward with, which is fine. It's not a bad arsenal and it's major league stuff and that's all good. But I think to your point, like we just need to see if it continues to trend in the right direction or if this just kind of is what he is. And if it is what he is, then that's, okay. That's fine. You're going to have a guy in your starting rotation that can over half a season pitch around 3 ERA ball and be all-star caliber. There is nothing wrong with that. But if there's a difference between that, maybe middle or back end rotation guy and that bona fide top end, and it certainly is the swing and miss. And that's something that, it is still kind of a small-ish sample since coming back from injury. Like, so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because he was so good in the first half. But I think you're absolutely right. I think kind of the second half and obviously bleeding over to next year will be really telling on kind of the direction that he's headed for sure.
To recap, the Tigers went from 4 All-Stars to 6 All-Stars in the past week, adding third baseman Zach McKinstry and right-hander Casey Mize to a group that already included left-hander Tarek Skubal, outfielder Riley Greene, second baseman Gleyber Torres, and outfielder Javier Baez. McKinstry was added to the All-Star team as a replacement for Houston Astros shortstop Jeremy Pena, who was dealing with a rib injury. Mize was added to the All-Star team as a replacement for Boston Red Sox left-hander Garrett Crochet, who opted out of the game due to workload concerns. We're going to see Skubal, Greene, Torres, and Baez as all-star starters, with McKinstry available off the bench and Mize available out of the bullpen. We'll see all of those guys on Tuesday in the All-Star game here in Atlanta. Scott, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for helping me out again this week. I'm sure we'll hear from you again next week if you're down for that.
Of course, brother. Yeah, you hit me up on there. That's pretty simple man in that regard. Yes, sir.
Everyone, that was Scott Bentley, host of the Locked On Tigers podcast. Next up, we're going to talk to draft expert Tyler Jennings about what the Tigers did on day 1 of the 2025 MLB Draft. But before we get to Tyler, we are going to take a break. Everyone, I'd like to welcome Tyler Jennings, the amateur scouting director for Just Baseball, to the Days of Roar podcast. We had him on the show for the MLB Draft last year, and we're lucky to have him again this year. Tyler, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, man. It was fun last year. I'm excited to get, down and dirty with this year's class.
All right, so walk me through everything that happened in day 1 of the 2025 MLB Draft. We'll get to the Tigers in a second, but just kind of what are your initial reactions to the top of the draft, how things went down, what kind of were some of your big takeaways when it comes to the players who were selected and maybe even the players who weren't selected?
Yeah, it was a lot of chaos right off the rip. And then we had heard, like an hour before that DC was kind of still trying to figure out what was going on. It definitely sounded like there was a bunch of routes that could have taken. And I feel like with Rizzo not being there and the Boris connection that they've had previously really played into the role that Eli Willits is now the first overall pick, which, good on DC. I think Willits is a very underrated prospect for what he is. He was top 5 for me. And he's also the youngest 1-1 pick ever. I believe he's 17.7 on draft day yesterday. So he's a very fun talent. I think he's definitely one of the safer guys in the draft, but like he's still a consistent force. Tyler Bremner too was also a really, really big curveball. That one shocked me a little bit, admittedly. Like definitely wasn't expecting that. We had a feeling they were probably going to go college arm. And I really do hope they develop Bremner a little bit because I think that the slider needs a bit more work, but a fastball changeup. I think guys are really sitting on that because the slider kind of fell off this year, but he's still a very good prospect in its own right. And I don't hate the player whatsoever. I'm interested to see what the Angels do in terms of signing bonus and how they really develop it. But other than that, like really just chaos at the top, and it continued through the rest of the night. I think my mock only had like 2 picks right. So it was definitely not the best showing, but mocks are an exercise in futility. So nobody's ever going to get them all right unless I think Jim Callis may have gotten like 18 straight back in the mid 2000s. But, otherwise it was a very fun night and, very surreal experience, first time being in the draft setting, and definitely was a moment to look back upon all the hard work coming into this. So I was very, very excited and very proud of what happened.
Yeah, I think everybody's mock drafts were blown up pretty early. Like they were talking about that on ESPN, MLB Network. It was like nobody really knew what was going on once things kind of went crazy there, with the first and the second pick. A lot of surprises there early on. And then obviously that, shatters the mock drafts. But anyway, on day one, the Tigers selected shortstop Jordan Yost at number 24 overall, catcher Michael Oliveto at number 34 overall, right-hander Malachi Witherspoon at number 62 overall, and left-hander Ben Jacobs at number 98 overall. We will get into every player, but before that, what do you think about the Tigers' day one draft haul as a whole?
I dig it. I really do. I know I texted you as like when Jordan Yost got taken at 24, I texted you as like, there's gotta be something going on at 34 as an overslot deal. Cause I just had a feeling that like, if they're quote unquote reaching, in which I had Yost as like a second round prospect, but like he's still very good in his own right, and shortstops came out the board very quickly. But I just had a feeling that someone was going to be taken over slot 34, and that was Oliveto. And Oliveto in his own right is very highly regarded in draft circles. I know Pipeline may have had him somewhere in the 200s, but we were the high guy on him. And shout out to Brian Recca, by the way, for him putting Oliveto on me and like really having me dive into that profile a lot more. Lots of scouts really love the makeup, and it's a really, really good left-handed bat in terms of offensive projection. So I think he can hit for power and average. In the last 2 arms, for me, I think Malachi is a bit more of a reliever. I think he's taken this high because people think he can start, and I do think he can start, but I think down the line it's more of a reliever role. And Ben Jacobs, I've enjoyed Jacobs for a while. He's kind of that same mold where he might be a reliever, but the stuff's really nasty. It's going to be a lot of strikeouts moving forward. So it's a very interesting group of guys, but I really, really do love the Oliveto pick for Detroit. I think he's a phenomenal person, and I've heard a lot of high remarks among scouts that have, gone to talk to him, go in-person meetings. So I think that's really going to be one of the best picks of the draft, personally, at the top. And that might even be me selling it way too high, but I really do love Oliveto for what he is.
The Tigers seem to really like prep hitters under assistant general manager Rob Metzler and scouting director Mark Connor. You got Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Bryce Rayner, Jordan Yost, Mike Oliveto. Like, why are the Tigers selecting so many hitters from the prep ranks at the top of the draft? And do you think that's a wise strategy?
I think it's wise. We've already seen it kind of really show itself where Kevin McGonigal has turned himself into one of the best prospects in baseball. And like, I know we had talked about this off air, but like his showing at the Futures game, his BP was ridiculous. It was a line drive contacts first 2 rounds, 3rd round, just unleashed the power. He was clearing the dropouts multiple occasions. Bersenio did the same thing. And Max Clark was really jumpy on the field. He really wanted to steal every base if he could. And I think that's a good way to go about it. Like, if you trust your development team enough to where you can get these guys that are going to have longer development paths, with preps especially because of just how young they are, I feel like there's a lot more dividends to be paid off in the future on that mark. So it's a really fun strategy to dive into. Kind of think it's like, the Padres, for example, have not taken a college guy in the first round in 10 years. So admittedly, I'll give AJ Preller credit where credit is due. He's a very talented scout. He knows what he's doing. And I understand that like not every single pick of his has made it to the majors with the Padres, but they've all turned into very valuable players in their own right. And this is kind of like a similar thing where Detroit is aiming on these higher upside prep bats that could very well be the future of the team. And I think that's a very fun strategy to really dive into and really move forward with that kind of contingent.
I love that you mentioned the San Diego Padres because Mark Connor, who is the Tigers scouting director, he spent 13 seasons with the San Diego Padres, including quite a bit of time as their scouting director before joining the Tigers in October 2022. So Mark Connor is cut from, exactly what the San Diego Padres do, where it's draft the high school players and go from there. Seems like a strategy that they're employing here in Detroit. We've seen it already, like I said, with, Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Bryce Rayner, and now Jordan Yost and Michael Oliveto. But to dig into the 4 picks on day 1 for the Tigers, let's dig a little bit deeper. What can you tell me about shortstop Jordan Yost, the number 24 overall pick?
Yeah, Yost is a very interesting guy. He was more of a pop-up this spring, so kind of like a Kellen Lindsay type from a year ago, where it was very projectable. He started tapping a bit more into his power, where, if I remember correctly, he had hit 0 high school home runs coming into the spring. And scouts are really in on the projectable left-handed hit tool. Like, this is a kid that didn't whiff on fastballs at all last summer across a decent sample size. It wasn't, otherworldly like some of these, like the Max Clark's where they had like 500 pitches to go off of. It was like 150, but Yost is very interesting. I don't know how much power he ever hits for at the next level, but I think if you get him in a proper weight training development program to where he can add some more pop to him, there's something there. It's a polished hit tool, so I really like what they've done there, and he's a very good athlete for what he is. So I think he might end up sticking at shortstop moving forward. We'll see what happens as he kind of like fills out his frame a little bit, because there's obviously cases of guys that do lose some athleticism as they really do fill out their frame. But, it's an enticing profile. I think I had him as a second rounder. So I don't think it's a too big of a reach, but it really plays into the strategy of getting, higher upside guys at the top, where like Oliveto, for example, is probably going to be an overslot pick for me, if I had to guess, where guys just absolutely love the tools and probably requires a little bit of money to get away from his commitment. But I think Yost is a fine guy to really take in that position to utilize that strategy.
And you've already talked a lot about Michael Oliveto, but 34th overall pick, what can you tell me about him? If there's anything more? What kind of competition did he face in New York? What's going to be the development as he goes to the minor leagues? How about defensively? Can he stick there behind the plate? What's the hit tool versus the power tool when it comes to where both of those are at right now, and then maybe where they project moving forward into the future? Who is Mike Oliveto and what can he become?
Yeah, like Oliveto himself, I think he could very well be not like a Tyler Stevenson kind of guy, but it's definitely a potential hit over power, maybe even equal. I think for him, there's going to be like, I would argue 50 average or like 50 hit, maybe 55 power. It's a lot of bat speed, a lot of leverage at the left side. And I think when you mentioned competition in New York, obviously it's not the greatest, but the cold weather states have been really performing well recently. And for Oliveto, his biggest asset in the fall was going to WWBA Worlds. That was his big breakout campaign. And if he doesn't go there, he's not this high of a pick. So it's very interesting to kind of dive into. I wonder if he's like a corner outfielder at the next level, because there are some rough patches to really develop on the defensive side behind the plate. But for him, like you're buying the bat here. And for me, I think this is definitely a guy that can not only hit for average, but hit for power from the left side. And it's really athletic, really smooth. And again, we talk about makeup. He's one of the most highly regarded guys in terms of makeup in this class. And that goes a long way with scouts. It really does. So he's a guy I really, really love. Again, shout out to Brian Recca for really recommending him to me, because that in and of itself is someone who knows his stuff, and he's been on him for over a year. So he deserves all the credit on this one for really getting everybody on him, I think.
What's there to know about right-hander Malachi Witherspoon, the number 62 overall pick?
Malachi is a very interesting prospect to really dive into. Obviously, his brother's the first rounder with Kyson to the Red Sox, but Malachi in his own right is very talented. It's a lower arm slot than what Kyson was, and it's a fastball curveball combo that's really lethal with shorter spurts, and can kind of lose his command really going deeper into outings. When I saw him against South Carolina earlier this year, there were some times where he would lose his command, wasn't locating the fastball, and then when he tried to overcompensate to try and get back into the zone, he got lit up a little bit. but the first inning was as dynamic as it could ever be for a guy that's the kind of profile that he is. And I think with the Tigers taking him here in the second round, they obviously think that he can start. And, I'm definitely in on the idea of letting him start for a bit, but I think his future role is somewhere in a bullpen, probably like a 7th, 8th inning guy to kind of set up for the closer. But it's really hard to ignore the kind of stuff that he has. It's been up to 99, curveballs in the low 80s with dynamic depth and spin. So I think there's something to work with there. If he can start, I'm all for it. I think he's a guy with stupid stuff. But again, this might be a guy that could be a 7th, 8th inning guy setting up for the closer in probably about 3 to 4 years.
Last but not least, your thoughts on left-hander Ben Jacobs, the number 98 overall pick.
Jacobs is fun. He's really fun. I mentioned before, it's a guy that's going to get you a lot of strikeouts, but the biggest thing on him was not going deep into games this year. He averaged closer to 4 2/3 or 5 innings to start, where he would strike out a ton of guys, but he really struggled to put guys away, and command kind of was off and on for him. But, it's a fun fastball. It's very hoppy. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of carry and ride to it. So he's going to get a lot of whiffs on the top rail at the strike zone. Lives 91, 94. He'll bump up 95 every once in a while. And he's a guy that he's really worked on the secondaries the past year or so. Like the splitter that he has turned into a viable weapon against right-handed hitters. I mean, he's very competent in throwing it. It really showed whenever he came to USA last summer and showed off the full arsenal. I think he's got a good breaking ball in the low 80s as well. He's a guy that, again, he very well could be a reliever moving forward. He's a short extender, kind of efforty a little bit, and the command's not where you want it, but he's definitely, in my opinion, got a better mold to be a starter than what Malachi is for my money. And, that I'm not Detroit. I'm just a guy sitting here doing rankings year round. So the way I look at it is I think Jacobs is another guy that can start, could be a reliever, but it's really, really nasty stuff.
So Tyler, you're down here in Atlanta for the MLB Draft, but you also watched the Futures game, which featured Tigers prospects Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, and Josue Briseño. All 3 of those players recently moved up to Double-A Erie. What do you think about what the baseball world is calling the big 3 in the Tigers farm system?
They deserve every single remark that they get from the big 3, man. They really do. Max Clark, for what he is, he's growing into the power. And the thing that really stood out to me, at least watching his style play during the Futures game, was how jumpy he was and how eager he was to steal bases. And I think that's really valuable for what he is. Like, it's a very polished bat, not going to be a ton of power moving forward, but he's really grown into it. But the speed aspect is a very valuable asset to have for him. And I think that's where you'll get a lot of value in terms of base running. But McGonigal, he looks like the best prospect in baseball right now, for my money. This is a guy that, a couple of years ago, I was wondering, where does he fit? Does he hit? Like, he's literally turned into the kind of guy you really want at the top of your farm system. And I had mentioned before where his BP was it was a strong showing first 2 rounds, like a lot of line drives, a lot of hard hit barrels. And then 3rd round just opens up the power. And if for a guy of his size, that kind of power is ridiculous. He cleared the chop house on more than one occasion. And then Briseño follows him right after, does the same thing. It was really impressive to kind of watch all 3 of those guys play. And let me tell you, I think Detroit really does have a very talented group of prospects in those 3. I think moving forward, there's very much going to be a conversation where they are the faces of the franchise moving forward.
Of those 3 prospects, how would you rank them? You got Kevin McGonigal, you got Max Clark, you got Josue Briseño. Who's first, who's second, who's third, and why?
I would go McGonigal, Clark, and Briseño. And again, it's mainly like McGonigal himself, the pairing of hit and power, and the ability to stay as shortstop is very valuable to the team. So he's number 1 for me. Clark is kind of the same way, where center fielder is also very valuable. It's one of the keystone positions on the field. So I think he's not too far behind at number 2. Briseño at number 3. He's definitely a guy I need to dive into more, but I very much enjoyed the power that he has to play, the tools that he has. I think he's 3, but they're all very close. They're very tightly packed in that grouping. So that's my ranking of them. Again, I really need to dive into Briseño more, but they're all very, very fun.
Let me throw one more name at you. Bryce Rayner. All right, this is a guy who got injured. He's out for the season. It's a bummer, but he's going to be healthy for 2026 spring training. When he was on the field, 35 games for Low A Lakeland, 288 batting average, 5 home runs, 20 walks, 33 strikeouts. Tigers selected him number 11 overall in 2024. Where does he slot in, right? We talk about Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, and Jose Briseño because they're moving through the farm system together. But when you do look at overall rankings, where do you see a guy like Bryce Rayner fitting in? Because it sure seems like he can stick at shortstop. And it also, the exit velocities are just absolutely off the charts at the low A level. He's 20 years old, still has a lot of growing to do, but at the same time, right now, he looks pretty ridiculous. Do you see him as more of the number 2 prospect in the organization following Kevin McGonigal? Or do you think maybe he slots in after Max Clark? Or is he even after maybe Jose Briseño or Fyron Lorenzo on, the Tigers' overall prospect list? Where do you see Bryce Rayner fitting in the small sample size that we saw from him at the low A level?
I think if he's not injured, he's definitely within the Max Clark range, maybe a bit behind him. You mentioned the exit velocities. I think I heard he hit like 112, 113. So you're looking at a guy that's left-handed bat, 6 power, has speed to hit, and can stick at shortstop. Like that in and of itself is very valuable. So I think if he stayed healthy and didn't get injured this year, he's very much in that 2, just slightly behind Max Clark range for me. We mentioned talking about him last year where he's like a Corey Seager type, where very big, might move off, but now he's really shown that he can definitely pick it at shortstop. And just the bat, dreaming upon that, man, it's going to be very valuable moving forward. I really hope he comes back very strong, very healthy in 26, because that's going to be a very fun player.
All right, Tyler, thank you for coming back on the Days of Roar podcast to break down day 1 of the 2025 MLB Draft and to discuss some of the Tigers' top prospects. I'm sure we'll talk to you again around this time next year, as long as you're up for it.
Yeah, I'm down. Hit me up whenever. Don't be shy. And if anybody's had any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer them.
Everyone, that was Tyler Jennings, amateur scouting director for Just Baseball. We have more to discuss this week, including Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson making Tigers history. But first, let's take a break. We're back, everyone. Thanks again to Tyler Jennings and Scott Bentley for joining the podcast this week. Let's dig into a couple of things before we get out of here. Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson, they have become the first Tigers teammates in all of Tigers history to achieve 40 extra base hits before the All-Star break. Yes, not even Miguel Cabrera and Prince Fielder or Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez accomplished what Tork and Greene accomplished in 2025. Entering the All-Star break, Greene had 46 extra base hits and Torkelson had 41 extra base hits. For Greene, it's 21 doubles, 1 triple, and 24 home runs. For Torkelson, it's 20 doubles and 21 home runs. So the All-Star game has been around since 1933. That's nearly 100 years. And no Tigers teammates had at least 40 extra base hits apiece at the All-Star break until Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson in the 2025 season. Another thing, I don't think we're talking about this enough. And I've been talking about it since the beginning of the season, but we have to keep bringing it up to spread awareness. Riley Greene is one of the best players in the American League. Like, so much so that I'm wondering if he continues doing what he's doing, is he going to finish top 3 in American League MVP voting? His 24 home runs, 3rd in the AL, trailing only Cal Raleigh's 38 and Aaron Judge's 35. His 78 RBIs, 3rd in the AL, trailing only Cal Raleigh's 82 and Aaron Judge's 81. You got Cal Raleigh, 82 RBIs, Aaron Judge, 81 RBIs, and Riley Greene, 78 RBIs. Like, Riley Greene will not catch up on the home run leaderboard, but he could finish 2025 as the RBI leader in the American League. Additionally, among 8 AL players with at least 20 home runs, Riley Greene ranks 3rd with a 284 batting average, trailing only Aaron Judge's 355 batting average and Byron Buxton's 289 batting average. So among the guys in the American League who are hitting for power, Riley Greene is 3rd best on that list when it comes to the batting average. Riley Greene's hitting, he's also hitting for power, and he's driving in runs. So you've been hearing it from me since the beginning of the season, even into spring training. Like, watch out for Riley Greene as a contender for top 5 in AL MVP voting if he keeps this up. Some All-Star game updates. Tarek Skubal is starting for the American League. Paul Skeens is starting for the National League. The game is set for 8 p.m. Tuesday at Truist Park here in Atlanta. And we finally get that Skubal-Skeens matchup, but only for 1 inning. We also need to give a shout out to Tigers clubhouse assistant and bat boy Frankie Boyd, who won the MLB All-Star Ball Crew vote, becoming the bat boy for the American League team at the All-Star game. He is a student at Eastern Michigan studying sport management. He has worked for the Tigers for years. I couldn't be happier for Frankie to get his All-Star appearance. And coming out of the All-Star break, the Tigers have 3 games against the Texas Rangers at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. Friday at 8 p.m., Saturday at 7 p.m., and Sunday at 7 p.m. The Tigers are on ESPN's Sunday Night Baseball for the second time in 4 weeks. And for the second time in 4 weeks, Tarek Skubal will start the primetime game. For the other 2 games, Reese Olson will pitch Friday and Casey Mize might pitch Saturday, though the Tigers could activate Sawyer Gipson-Long from the injured list for Saturday's start if Mize needs extra rest coming out of the All-Star game. All right, it's time to get out of here. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Days of Roar. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. Drop us a rating and comment what you think about the show. If you could do that, I would really appreciate it. Please stick with freep.com/sports for the latest Tigers coverage. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, sports editor Bill Bradley, and our magical producer, Robin Chan. For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Evan Petzold. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go in peace.